there's been a lot of public outcry and outreach trying to understand the different jurisdictions. The jurisdiction is so essential to all of this, to be able to fend for oneself, protect your community, protect your family, protect your friends. It all boils down to jurisdiction, okay? And why you are a national, state national, and constitutional, but not statutory citizen. And we're going to continue on with where I left off because it's getting more and more important for people to realize who they are. With CPS, with the foreign private for-profit ad hoc corporations known and identified as courts using DUNS numbers and SAN codes and cage codes and everything else to fleece your estate, okay? That's what they're doing. Tendering of payment does not necessarily come in the form of Federal Reserve notes. In fact, it's the complete opposite. A Federal Reserve note is an obligation of debt. It comes with a liability, okay? It raises the national debt. And we then and there become enemy belligerent combatants of the state, okay? And because we are aiding and abetting a foreign occupier on our land to destroy the principles and values of this great nation, okay? When they walked away from gold and silver being coined as a true form of payment in the United States of America and the Union of States, they pretty much disemboweled the United States of America. But because they reaped the benefit of taking all the gold and silver, they also reap the disadvantage, which means they now have a fiduciary obligation and a trust relationship because we gave them something of value and they gave us nothing in return. It creates a trust. And this is why I keep screaming at the top of my lungs for people to start studying trust law, to comprehend what's truly happening. Everything is trust. There are a multitude of trusts that are formulated throughout the governments of the world, and they are executed flawlessly. And the truth of the matter is, people need to know that they're the beneficiary of those trusts and how to claim. Men make claims, corporations file complaints. How to make your claim, okay? Now, the true form of payment is a stamp. I would agree with that. You know, it's one of the things that isn't found in the statutory code under Title 31, under the term legal tender. You will never find a money order from the United States Postal Office listed as a tender of payment. You won't see it. You won't see it as an obligation of the United States under Title 8, or Title 18, subsection 8. You won't see it. You won't see stamp in there either, which is pretty impressive. So I would agree with you on that, Keith. And by the way, your work is phenomenal as of late. I've really enjoyed it. So let's move on. The reason that no privilege can attach to the status of citizen is that privileges are the main method of surrendering natural or constitutional rights, or constitutionally protected rights. In this manuscript, I really don't like how they say constitutional rights, because constitutional rights don't exist. There is no such thing as a constitutional right. There are constitutionally protected, unalienable rights. But there is no such thing as a constitutional right, and we're going to get into that. And I haven't been around for a little bit because I suffered a short stint with gout, and Lord knows I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. That is one hell of a painful endeavor. So, moving forward, slowly getting back to being proficient in my studies again after enduring all that pain. The state, in such cases, exercise no greater right than an individual may exercise over the use of his own property, when leased or loaned to the other. The condition upon which the privilege shall be enjoyed being stated or implied in the legislation authorizing it its grant, no right is, of course, impaired by their enforcement. The recipient of the privilege, in effect, stipulates to comply with the condition. It matters not how limited the privilege conferred, its acceptance implies an assent, to the regulation of its use and the compensation for it. Munn versus Illinois, 994 U.S. 113, 1876. We'll go on further to elaborate. But when Congress created a statutory right, a privilege, or a public right, in this case, such as a trade or business, it clearly has the discretion in defining the rights to create presumptions or assign burden of proof or prescribe remedies. It may also provide that person seeking to vindicate that right must do so before a particularized tribunal created to perform the specialized adjudicative task related to that right. FN 35, such provisions do, in a sense, affect the exercise of judicial power, but they are also incidental to Congress. Power to define the right that it has created. No comparable justification exists. However, when the right being adjudicated is not of congressional creation, in such a situation, substantial inroads into function that have traditionally been performed by the judiciary cannot be characterized merely as incidental extensions of Congress' power to define rights that it has created. Rather, such inroads suggest unwarranted encroachments upon the judicial powers of the United States, which our Constitution reserves for Article 3 courts. So if you're in an Article 1 military tribunal, you're not in an Article 3 court. We need to get that corrected. Northern Pipeline Constitution Co. versus Marathon Pipeline Co. 458 U.S. 50 102 S period CT period 2858 1983. Because no privilege can attach to citizens, the status also cannot be a privilege, and therefore cannot be a statutory status. Since the income tax is imposed upon citizens and residents in Title 26 CFR subsection 1.1-1, then these parties, by definition, cannot be the people with natural or constitutionally protected rights, because the status therein is treated as a taxable privilege in the context. The only way you can be a citizen without privileges is therefore to be so in a political rather than civil or statutory context. The above is why a privilege is defined as a private or special right imputed or assigned to those who are other than citizens. Privilege, a particular benefit or advantage enjoyed by a person, company, or class beyond the common advantage of other citizens. Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 1197. For the purpose of the above, privileges, civil status, and benefits are synonymous with a civil status under any act of the government. All civil statutory law is law for government and not private people. The above concepts are also why it is a maximum of the common law that you have a right to not receive and by implication not pay for a benefit privilege that you do not want. No one is obliged to accept a benefit against his consent, Digest 50, 1769, but if he does not dissent, he will be considered as assenting. A man may relinquish for himself and his heirs a right which was introduced for his own benefit. See First Bouvier's Institution on American Law, 83. And transactions between strangers may benefit, but cannot injure persons who are parties to them. 6 Co. 1, Bouvier's Maxims of Law, 1856 is the source. If after reading this document you decide that you want to do something positive with the information you read here to improve your life and restore your sovereignty, the following options are available. If you want to learn about citizenship and sovereignty, if you want to file a non-resident tax return as a non-resident non-person, and in most cases, get all of your money back legally, see section 16.1.8 later, entitled IRS Form 1040 NR Schedule OI, which shows you how to fill out the citizenship information on the 1040 NR, non-resident. The 1040 NR is the non-resident, okay? How to file forms. This is a member. Yep. Let's get back to the heart of the subject matter here. Summary of how to enslave any people by abusing citizenship terms and language. It is instructive to summarize how citizenship, words of art, can be abused to enslave any people. Make the government into an unconstitutional monopoly in providing protection, thus turns government into a mafia protection racket. Title 18 U.S.C. Chapter 95. Ensure that the government never prosecutes its own members for their racketeering crimes and instead uses the law only to selectively enforce against political dissidents or those who refuse their protection racket. This act of omission promotes anarchy by making the government not only the source of law, but above the law, not as a matter of law, but as a matter of invisible policy. Eliminate legal liability for the truthfulness of anything that any member of any branch other than the judiciary says verbally or in writing. This unleashes the Lucifer effect, documented by psychologist Philip Zimbardo. Facilitates and protects massive, rampant, unconstitutional, or illegal or injurious abuse by those in the legal profession and the government. Abuse, unaccountable, and often anonymous government propaganda to make people falsely believe that, one, civil statutes, sorry guys, Facebook meddling with me a little bit. Let's pick up where we left off. Abuse, unaccountable, and often anonymous government propaganda to make people falsely believe that, one, civil statutes, all of which only pertain to government, are the only remedy for anything. Two, everyone is a public officer called a citizen or resident who has to do anything and everything that any politician publishes in the employment agreement called the civil law. Any civil obligation, any corrupt politician lawfully attached to the status of citizen without compensation, because calling yourself a citizen is voluntary, and anything done to you that you volunteer for is for an injury. This doesn't violate the 13th Amendment because you volunteer. The citizen cannot complain because he has voluntarily submitted himself to such a form of government. He owes allegiance to the two departments, so to speak, and within their respective spheres must pay exacts for disobedience to its laws. In return, he can demand protection from each within its own jurisdiction. United States versus Crinkshaw, 92 U.S. 542, 1875, emphasis added. There is no common law. Common law is the only way to lawfully approach the government as a private human and equal rather than a public officer. Being a citizen under the civil statutes and employment agreement is a result of birth rather than civil domicile. This makes it impossible to unvolunteer because being born is not. Electing a domicile is consensual. Define everyone in receipt of that protection as receiving a franchise benefit. In other words, turn justice into a franchise. Give this benefit the name privileges and prosecute as thieves all those who refuse to receive the benefit or paid for the benefit. This happens all the time at tax trials. The government prosecution tells